Today on RPG Horror Stories, we have a DM who used his campaign as a fan fiction for a Mary Sue DMNPC, completely stealing player initiative in both a story and gameplay sense. Without further ado, let's get started. This story came to me spontaneously after occurring several years ago. I am still gaming with the DM and all the players here, though this isn't his first or last situation. This was also, maybe, the last session. I can't recall how many more after this we had before it all ended abruptly, as so many under this DM did, in favor of changes in pace or system, or other people taking the mantle temporarily. Not to say this game was all bad. We had some good fun at times, with references to it that we still make to this day. Beware, this one came out longer than I thought it would. TLDR at the bottom. So this was using a generic and flawed anime tabletop role-playing game system, where we played mecha pilots fighting the bad guys. Each of us had a backstory, putting us at the top of our class for various reasons. Examples: I was a failed super soldier experiment that left me at a child's mental faculties, but with a physical capacity far beyond any normal human. One other player was a tactical genius, having blasted a scouting party of combat mechs while only piloting a training model himself. Our first session, we raided a hidden base on a backwater planet, where we found the daughter of the leader of the bad guys being held by some random punks with guns and tanks. It didn't make much sense to me personally, but anime, so I was willing to look past it. The only two animes I've ever watched are Yu-Gi-Oh! And Death Note, so is this something that occurs often? Anyway, in the next few sessions, it just kept getting worse, in a weird way. At some point, the DM talks to us about a very similar campaign he was in the past, with some very specific, familiar characters. Specifically, the BBEG's daughter and the DM's DMPC. I don't remember when we picked this guy up, but he's some stoic badass type with a list of accomplishments as long as our ship. In the previous campaign, the DM explains, he was on a team with 4 other players who found some kind of old high-tech mechs in a secret cavern below the surface of some planet. They kicked some serious ass for a while. There was some weird sort of love triangle dynamic that our DM assures he should have totally gotten the girl, and that is a very important detail to know, and the group devolved into infighting. According to him, he outsmarted the other players, but the DM pulled some deus ex machina, and it ended with everyone in the party dying and the cavern collapsing, destroying the mechs and leaving the remains lost forever, or something. Most importantly, he made it perfectly clear that most of the previous campaign was canon. The guy we're talking to is the same guy as in his story, except he didn't die and still had that super OP top secret mech. This is where an alarm bell started ringing about the whole game, but the game night with this guy was basically a social obligation, and we had been gaming in that place for so long. The thought of not going was really not a thing. At one point, flying through empty space to get to the drop-off point for the BBEG's daughter, she's kind of just hanging out in jail, moderately annoyed at the whole situation with nothing interesting to say that I recall. Ambush. We are attacked. The bad guys are tracking us, somehow. Big space gunfight. We all climb into our suits and shoot down shuttles. And fighters and bombers, sure, but they all die in one hit, basically. It's like straight up swatting flies, not a space battle. Until, suddenly and dramatically, a single enemy mecha. His mecha suit is very shiny, bristling with weapons, and super nimble. In fact, it doesn't look like a model our party has ever seen. Uh-oh. You guessed it. It's another member of the previous campaign's party. He flies out to charge us, but the DM NPC interrupts, and they start dueling. Wowzers. Frankly, we ignore them, and resign to keep fighting ships until the DM is done fighting himself. Except for one of us. The party sniper isn't content with one-shotting fruit flies now that there is an actual meaningful target in play. He dedicates his turn to shooting the dueling pair. The DM seemed surprised and frustrated, giving him a penalty for shooting into melee. Nope, my scope negates that penalty. He rolls and gets a very good result, one that had been taking out the fast intercept ships easily. The DM describes it as a pretty good shot that almost misses the dueling pair. Next round, they're still fighting, and it's quote-unquote hard to tell who's winning. Sniper wants to even the odds, rolling even better than last time. DM is clearly disappointed. He describes the suit taking massive damage and detonating completely, leaving no trace of its advanced technology. The DMPC simply hangs in space for a movement, staring before slowly turning and returning to the ship. The rest of the combat is hand-waved. Apparently it only existed to show those two fight? We question the DMPC about who that guy was, and he gives a vague, non-committal answer. We demand to know since we're the space military, and he whips out a badge we haven't seen him have before. Apparently, he has a rank in our military, and, quote from the DM, if he's a major, you guys are privates. Nice. We put our heads together and, for reasons I can't recall, decide to sneak our mechanic into the hangar where the DMPC keeps his mech, figure out how it's built, and give it to our military, since the DMPC seems content to keep it secret for reasons. Suddenly, even though over the course of the entire game so far, about 8 sessions by the way, we can't just spend the XP and get better skills at stealth, he snaps at us, saying, I don't know about you, but I didn't hear anyone roleplay those skill ranks. I didn't say you could just take those skills. We are stunned because he had been silent the entire planning session until now, and again, we had been doing exactly that the entire game. This rule about role-playing skills has never been mentioned, and now he puts a limit on skills. After X amount of points, you're basically better than any human ever. You gotta have a damn good reason to have more than X number, which again, had never been mentioned up until this point. One player wanted to put a point into what amounted to tactical knowledge and was allowed, but then another player, whose entire backstory was about how much of a tactical genius he was only allowed to raise his skill up to 1 point below the other guy. No roleplay needed for that, by the way. The only skill he seemed to enforce was that of stealth, where we decided to do some kind of training exercise, and where the title of this post was formed. While we were creeping around this dark maze thing, he had each of us, the DMPC that is, one at a time roll stealth and perception. No matter what our result seemed to be, every time the DMPC would suddenly be right behind you, pressing a knife into your neck. He says, not good enough, and vanishes again. He did this to all of us. Just, haha, my DMPC is better than you. We got to improve our stealth skill, seemingly begrudgingly, but we still had to go through all that crap. Well, at least we can go on and grab the blueprints for the mech like we planned, right? Nope. From what I remember, not only was the design way too complex for our savant of a mechanic, he was simultaneously able to figure out that attempting to activate anything about it without being the DMPC would basically set off a nuclear warhead. Just another massive middle finger to the party. Despite the DM having heard us plot this out over an hour in real life, he just said, screw it, okay, sure, and he moved on. That earned us some thinly veiled threats from the DMPC. Next, the probable worst offender in the whole campaign here. There had been sprinkled hints of this DMPC caring for the BBEG's daughter for unknown reasons. She knew who he was, he implied they had history, other menial crap that was only noticed because it was practically the only plot to speak of. At some point, we gather a group to talk or interrogate or something. The party is all there, our ship's captain is there, the DMPC is there, and lastly, so is the BBEG's daughter. We start laying into these two. Why are you being so secretive? We don't care what your rank is. Who was that other mecha pilot that knew who you were? And more. He predictably gives us the "that's classified" and "none of your business" answers until we lay it all out, amounting to, look, we know you have some kind of history with this lady, you almost got discharged over something you did, now you have these high-tech mech pilots coming after you, what's the big deal? After that, The DM's face lit up. He gave us this big smile and asked for a perception check. Mixed results. He tells us, "You all notice that DMPC and BBEG's daughter both have gray eyes." He pauses, letting that hang in the air, and then shouts, "Bang! There's gunshots behind you! It burrows straight into DMPC's chest! Roll initiative!" Guys, music. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so that was a lot. Basically, in case you missed it, after having been on the ship for months and having interacted with those two for months, their eye color, which I'm confident to this day had never previously come up, was brought up as the connection between these two. You might be thinking, oh no, and I tell you, oh yes, she's actually his daughter. Her mother was the one the party in the last campaign argued to death over, except in this campaign, the DMPC got the girl. The BBEG either doesn't know or something. It's never clarified. What's more, apparently we have an assassin on board, one that literally nobody had noticed a substantial sign of for who knows how long, on a ship whose crew was over 1,000 strong. It later comes out, the DM tells us out of character when we were all going, what the hell? That he had actually gotten onto our ship way back during the rival mech fight. We had been so distracted by the fight we hadn't noticed an intact shuttle boarding our ship. No, we never got to roll to find this shuttle. No, it didn't matter that our sniper was actively watching for targets of opportunity and shooting any ship that obviously wasn't ours. He just parked his shuttle and climbed on in, and had been here ever since. What's more, he was using super lethal special fire ammo. The DM described it as a mix between a round that drills itself deeper and a white phosphorus round. So it's super deadly, ridiculous ammunition. Sure. Our mechanic makes a mental note to requisition them later. In the meantime, the DMPC took one more to the chest and lights his cigar as he waits for the medics. No exaggeration, he apparently was naturally tough enough to just soak it in. In fact, he points out that the medics kept pushing his arm out of the way as he smokes the cigar, or something like that. Anyway, meanwhile, the assassin is running away. Where? Who knows? Probably some hole in the wall he's been in for the past 3 months. Unlucky for him, he forgot that my character is actually just insane. I was almost as fast as a character could possibly be, so I caught up to him without a sweat. Plus, I had the sniper on my back, calling out where he was. You forgot which sub you're on? Despite my absolute ludicrous speed, the DM keeps making me roll tests to see exactly how fast you go, because this guy is just as fast. Okay, whatever, just keep invalidating everyone's characters and I'll keep the plot train going. We catch him eventually. He tries to commit suicide with some massive plasma bomb, but I disarm him. That's honestly about it. Later, we learn this guy is, you guessed it, another member of the previous mecha team, and he still has his mech too. The BBEG's daughter gets delivered to our government stronghold for hostage without any fanfare, and the DMPC? I don't know what happened to him. I don't really care. Still don't to this day. The DM didn't read the room at all, and continued to make vapid stories filled with exploits his previous characters did, and is, by the pure grace of God above, still playing with us to this day. But why? Why? Anyway, TLDR, DMPC is the main character. The last campaign was all about him, and its ending was retconned, so he came out on top and could be the focus of this one too. You better not roll better than him, or else it will get hand-waved, and you will be humiliated. So, where to start with this one? Well, we should probably start with DMPCs. Yes, the line between DMPCs and allies in a D&D game is a thin one. How do you tell the difference? Well, I've gone over this before. DMPCs are distinguished by just normal NPC allies by the fact that DMPCs steal the spotlight from the players. That fight with the rival mecha pilot is a great example of a DMPC stealing the spotlight. Not because the fight happened at all. I've had NPCs fight the bad guys before, but the fact that the DMPC was winning and didn't need the player's help, that is very bad. In fact, It is probably one of the worst things you can do. Never let an NPC completely just steal a fight from the players. I've had NPCs help out, I've had NPCs even hold off the bad guys for a second, but I never have them win. Sometimes I actually use powerful NPCs to establish how threatening the bad guys are. In my campaign, there is an NPC that the players know as the Sovereign. She's a very powerful sorceress. However, when she went up against the big bad evil guy, she was quickly, well, destroyed by him. Point being, it is okay to have NPCs fight in your campaign. The heroes are not the only ones who can do fighting. However, having NPCs steal the spotlight away from the players and take initiative in the story, that is really, really bad. Also, never use your campaign as a fan fiction of another campaign, because that's essentially what this was. It was a story about the DMPC, not about the players. They were just there, which is never a good thing. The entire story of this campaign revolves around this DMPC and his secret daughter, not around the players. Never in the story is player backstory brought up, is player initiative used. In fact, the DMPC has even taken control of the player's progression in a game sense. That is never ever acceptable. Player progression is something that is controlled by the players, not the DM's Mary Sue main character. There's a little bit of railroading in here too, with not letting the players steal the mech. That's not good. Again, allowing the DMPC to take precedent over the players. The DM is prioritizing the mech and its secrets over the players and their initiative, which again, very, very bad. This is probably one of the worst stories I've ever seen, just because of how blatantly this DM does not care about the players at all, at least seemingly. I don't know the guy, he could be a really nice dude outside the game, but this is really bad. Never let DMPCs take control of your campaign. And if you are a player and you see this kind of behavior, you need to call it out, and then you might need to consider leaving the campaign. A DM that prioritizes his characters over your characters is a DM that doesn't truly care. If you guys enjoyed this episode of RPG Horror Stories and want to let me know, then please do hit that like button. If you want to see more episodes of RPG Horror Stories, as well as my other content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.